So the next step is to recover the crude. In other words, separate your 3,5-diphenyl isoxazoline from the solvent it's in. So what we do is we take the conical flask containing your product dissolved in the solvent onto a hot plate, and then we boil off the solvent. We have a boiling stick here to ensure even boiling. So where the stick touches the glass, you see little bubbles coming up as the solvent boils off. If you don't have the stick in there, what can happen is the solvent can just bump, and then it can come out the top of the flask, or you just don't see it boiling nicely. So if you put the stick in there, you can see it boiling off quite nicely. So you boil off the solvent until the bubbles subside, and you should get a yellow oil starts to form. Okay, so once it goes from colourless, it starts to go a little bit yellowy, and that's when you know when to stop boiling off the solvent. If you leave it on there too long, the colour goes from yellow to orange to brown, and you'll burn your product. Because this hot plate is very hot and above the melting point of your product, it will actually form an oil rather than a solid. So you think if you took off all your solvent, you'd be just left with your solid product, but it's melted, so you get this yellow oil. So you don't want to burn this, so you just take off the dichloromethane until it just starts to go yellow, and then that's when you take it off the hot plate. And then you leave this to cool on the bench, and crystals of the crude product should start to form. So you don't agitate this, you just leave it on the bench. Better crystals form if you cool it slowly. So don't put it in an ice bowl to form crystals, but let it cool first in air. Let it get to room temperature. Once it's at room temperature, then you can put it in an ice bowl to improve the yield. So you'll get even more solid forming. If crystals don't form, it might be that you've added a bit too much dichloromethane. So you can return it to the hot plate, boil off a bit more solvent, and then go through the cooling step again. Cooling in air first, then cooling on ice, and eventually you'll start to get some product formed. And then to separate the solid product from the dichloromethane, you will use a Buchner flask and a Buchner funnel. So what you've got here is the Buchner flask with the side arm, got some tubing connected to the gas tap, then you've got your Buchner funnel attached by a rubber separator or bung. You've got some filter paper in here, so you're pouring your crystals with their solvent into here and collect off the crystals. So your crystals will be captured by the filter paper, the liquid will go through. You don't need this filtrate, this dichloromethane, so that can be disposed of via a waste solvent bottle. And then the solid can then be poured onto a weighing paper, and you can use a spatula to help remove the solid from the Buchner funnel. Then you're going to transfer the crude product into a dry conical flask ready for the recrystallisation. So that is the purification step coming up next. So you've got the crude product, it will still have some impurities, but the recrystallisation step coming up next will purify it.